What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to the show. So I posted a video yesterday talking about Iowa, the Senate race in Iowa. We even looked at the governor's race in Iowa. And what do you know? There's a new poll that just came out. So I showed you a poll yesterday. It showed Hinson ahead of Turek, but it was within that margin of error. There's no clear leader. And now we have another poll, and this is a Fox News poll. We're gonna talk a little bit about this, but not only are we gonna look at the headline numbers, we're gonna get into the poll, because when you get into the poll, there's some shocking information that comes out in this poll, and I'm gonna share that with you guys, and I'll show you the different questions that were asked of the people who participated in this poll. And this is good news for Turek. It's really good news for Turek. So that's what we're going to focus on in this video. But first off, if you guys can do me a favor, please like the video. And if you're watching this video and you want to see more content like this, please consider subscribing to the channel. Okay, let's look at the headline number. So the headline number is, and we'll go through the whole thing here. So we have Fox News. So a Fox News poll. This was posted on 7/1. And you had 1,003 registered voters, margin of error here, plus or minus 3%. So when we break this down, I like the sample size, that's good. Registered voters, that's okay, but I would prefer likely voters. And then the margin of error is good at plus or minus 3%. Now let's look at the result. So the result here, Turek at 50%, Hinson at 46%. Now, although Turek has the lead here, this still does fall within that margin of error. So I want to make that clear, but I would rather be, in a poll like this, I would rather be on the side that Turek is at 50% than at 46%. And remember, just yesterday, we looked at the Siena New York Times poll, and that was posted on the same day, 7/1, and you had 600 likely voters. Look at the margin of error there, plus or minus 5%. And you had Turek at 46, and you had Hinson at 48. So now it's reversed. But you have to look at that margin of error. The margin of error is plus or minus 5%. The margin of error right above that, plus or minus 3%. And so if you're looking at both polls, I would go with this poll over going with the poll right below it, because those numbers below it, plus or minus 5%, are plus or minus 3%. So now I want to dive into the actual poll, because this is pretty amazing. There's some stuff on here. I'm telling you, when it comes to just some of the questions that were asked and the responses, the Hinson campaign should be really concerned about what's coming out of this poll. Now, this is a Fox News poll, and I will say, Fox News, they do some pretty good polls, okay? You hear Fox News poll and you think, oh, well, that's just going to lean to the right. It does, and this poll does lean to the right. Let's go down to the bottom here. I think I'm going to start showing this before we even get into the polls, just so you kind of know what the demographic looks like. So when we're looking at the political identification, you see Democrats here. So 41% are Democrats. So solid Democrats, 33%, and then lean Democrat, 8%. When it comes to Republicans, 48%. Solid Republican, 40%. Lean Republican, 8%. And then independents here, you have 12%. So you see this poll is, there are more Republicans in this poll than there are Democrats in this poll, and then you have a small number of independents. And so when we start looking at some of these different questions that are being asked, you need to keep that in your mind. We're not saying that all Republicans are going to vote for the Republican, going to vote for Hinson, and all the Democrats are going to vote for Turek, and then the independents, they'll choose one candidate. We're not saying that, but if I'm looking at a poll where you have more Republicans than you do Democrats, that should benefit the Republican candidate more than the Democratic candidate. That's just the way that I see it in a lot of situations. But remember, we do have 12% that are independents, and so they could push the numbers one way or the other as well. But let's go ahead and take a look at some of these questions. And so the first question here is centered around motivation. How motivated are you to vote in the November election? And it says here, motivated, so total 85%. Extremely motivated, 57%. Very motivated, 28%. And then when it comes to not motivated, that's 15%. So not very motivated, 12%. And then not at all motivated, 2%. And so this is a little concerning for both campaigns, right? Because they're looking at this, both the Hinson campaign and Turek campaign, you do have some people that are just not motivated to vote. Now, if it's Democrats, if you're just thinking about who's in power right now, it's more likely that the Democrats would be more energized to vote because they want that change, but the Republicans might not be as motivated to vote. So we could see more Republicans in this group, or we could see even independents in this group that are not motivated. We don't know exactly because they don't give us that information, but I'm just putting it out there. When it comes down to it, if you do have, I think this is going to be a change election, this midterm election, and you're going to see, we're already seeing it. We're seeing it on the Democratic side. You're seeing Democratic Socialists winning in some of these different races. You're seeing outsiders like Plattner winning in races. You're seeing Dan Osborne, the independent, getting a lot of attention. You're seeing candidates that are, they're outside of the norm for Democrats, outside of the norm for Republicans. And we'll have to see how that progresses, but I just wanted to mention that. Now, this is what we just went over. So when it comes down to who would you vote for if the election were held today? Would you vote for Turek or would you vote for Hinson? And that's that 50% here. And then when it comes to Hinson, 46%. And then don't know, that's 4%. Okay, so this is what I'm talking about when I'm saying that there's some interesting stuff that's coming out of this poll. Okay, it says, are you certain to support, and they're talking about question number 2, Turek or Hinson, or do you think you may change your mind and support someone else? Very important question. So are you going to support, how passionate are you about your candidate? Are you going to vote for Turek? Are you going to vote for Hinson? Or are you open to voting for someone else? Let's look at the response here. And so 82% of Turek supporters said that they are certain to support Turek. When it comes to Hinson, 72% says that they are certain that they're going to vote for Hinson. Now look at this. You may change your mind. When it comes to that question, you have 17% for Turek, 27% for Hinson. And then don't know, you have 1% for Turek and then 2% for Hinson. Now this is what I'm looking at here. This 27. So 27% are saying that they could change their mind, which tells me that they could either vote for another candidate, or they might not vote at all, or they could vote for Turek. And that is a problem for Hinson. And when you look at Turek is at 17. That's not the greatest number, but at least he's not in that 27, almost 30% of her supporters are saying that they could change their mind. And so that's something that I'm sure the Hinson campaign is very concerned with, because those numbers aren't good. Now, when we move forward here, it says, if Turek in question 2, would you describe your vote as mainly for Turek or against Ashley Hinson? Okay, so that's the question there. For Turek, 60%. Against Hinson, 37%. This is something, and then don't know is 2. This is something that the Turek campaign needs to look at, because you really need to define yourself as a candidate. And Turek right now, he's still relatively fresh, right? Because the primary just happened, and so people are still trying to get to know who Turek is, but he really needs to get that campaign out there and let people know who he is, because you have some people that they're not really voting for Turek, they're voting against Hinson. Okay, and that could be good, but it could also be bad if you're not defined as a candidate. You want people energized about you. You want people coming out to vote for you, not necessarily just coming out to vote against someone else. Okay, so when we look at that same question for Hinson, we have for Hinson is 77%. So you have, she has a larger number there when it comes to people that are voting for her. And against Turek, you have 19%. And then don't know, you have 4%. So you do have a smaller percentage. About half of the people that were polled here are saying that they are voting against Turek as opposed to voting for Hinson. And so she's better defined. People know who she is. Now, she's a current congresswoman, so that's probably the main reason why people know who she is. Okay, let's go to the next question here. So it says, regardless of how you plan to vote, how concerned are you that Josh Turek's positions on the issues are too liberal? Okay, that's the question. Let's look at the response here. 37% total concerned. So extremely concerned, 17%. Very concerned, 19%. Not concerned, the total there is 59%. 33% not very concerned, and 27% not at all concerned, and then you have 4% don't know. Okay, so when we're looking at this is what stands out to me. 59% say that they're not concerned. Almost 60% of the people that were polled say they're not really that concerned as far as him being too liberal. Okay, so that, when it comes to Turek, that's a good sign for Turek, because people aren't just saying, oh, he's a liberal, so I'm going to vote for Hinson, or I'm not going to vote for him. Now, let's move to the next question. Regardless of how you plan to vote, how concerned are you that Ashley Hinson is too close to Donald Trump? Remember, when we're talking about the midterm election, it's going to be a referendum on the president, and the president can bring these candidates down. We've been talking about this a lot, right? So let's look at the response here. Total of 50%. Concerned, extremely concerned is 35%. Very concerned, 15%. Not concerned here, total of 48%. Not very concerned, you have 22%. Not at all concerned, 26%. So this should be concerning for the Hinson campaign. Why? Because you have people who are extremely concerned, 50%. It's higher than the 48%. So you have the majority of people that were polled here. They're very concerned that she is too close to Donald Trump. And so that can hurt her. And she even said, talking about the war in Iran, she said if this continues to last, it's going to hurt her campaign, because they had some of the soldiers that passed away, they were from Iowa. And so she knows that this whole war in Iran, if they don't come to some type of resolution fast, it's going to impact her election. Okay, let's move forward here. It says, which of the following issues will be the most important to you? Okay, so you guys know this question. They ask this question in pretty much every poll that I've seen, and you guys know what the answer is. It's always inflation and higher prices. It's always inflation and higher prices. 39%. This is what everyone who wants to win, every candidate who wants to win, Democrats should be running on this. You don't have to run on, well, Donald Trump did this and Donald Trump said that and Donald Trump did. You don't have to run on that. All you need to do is run on affordability. All you need to be talking about is inflation is too high, because it is. All you need to be talking about is gas prices are still too high. Even though they've come down a little bit, they're still too high, and we're still in this situation in Iran. Things haven't really changed that much. That's all you need to talk about. That's all they should be talking about. Now, some candidates are choosing to try to get in and talk a little bit more about corruption and things like that. Tallarico's talking a little bit about corruption, but you notice when Tallarico talks about corruption, he will tie in, that's why you can't afford the things today. It's because of corruption. So he always ties it into affordability. And that's what candidates need to do. They need to remind people, look, there was a promise made, and that promise was that prices are going to come down, and they haven't come down. And that's the ball game right there. So we'll see what candidates are doing, and if they continue to push forward with that. But that is the winning message. Okay, now I want to look at one of the. We'll take a look at one of the governor. We'll look at the governor's race overall, okay, and then we'll take a look at the rest of them. But when it comes to Rob Sands, he's a Democrat. He's actually doing well in the polls. I looked at the poll that I did yesterday when we were talking about it. Rob Sands was winning in the poll, okay, and he's also winning in this poll. So he gets 53%. You have Zach Lane. He gets 44%. I had to look up his name because I didn't know how to pronounce it. I don't like pronouncing names wrong, so it's Lane. Okay, and then don't know, that's 3%. So here's yet another poll where you have Rob Sands leading, and he's a Democrat. And someone in the comments yesterday posted that this could help Turek, and I agree with you 100%. If Rob Sands finds a way to win, he could pull up Turek as well, because you have people coming out to vote for Rob Sands, and while they're voting for Rob Sands, they might say, you know what, I'm going to vote for Turek as well. And so this is a combo. They should be getting together. I'm sure they will in the future, Turek and Sands, and really try to get over the finish line together. So let's do two more here. So thinking about your personal financial situation, do you feel like you are getting ahead financially, holding steady, or falling behind? Okay, important question. We're talking about affordability, inflation, and all that. So getting ahead, we have 11%. Holding steady, we have 46%, which is a good number for people that are holding steady, right? So people, if you're in that category, you don't really see a big change. So that could be bad, because you could be one of those people that thought, you know what, I'm voting for this current administration because they're going to bring prices down, but they haven't brought prices down. And so you're pretty much in the same situation that you were in 2 years ago, 3 years ago. And the reason why you voted, if some of these people voted for President Trump, the reason why you voted for President Trump is because you wanted to see a change. You wanted to be getting ahead, but you're still not getting ahead. Okay, falling behind, 42%, which is another large number, right? You have 42% of the people that are falling behind, and then don't know 1%. So these numbers aren't good for the, if you're one of these people who is, sticking with the current administration and the current policies and the plans that they're putting forward. When you look at 42%, that's not good. That means you have a lot of people that are falling behind, and a lot of these people are, basically saying we need help and we're not getting it. Okay, last one we're gonna look at is favorable, unfavorable. So looking at favorable, unfavorable, and we'll look at Rob Sand first. So Rob Sand, 54%, and that's the total there when it comes to favorable. 32% strongly, 23% somewhat. We look at unfavorables, the total there is 33%, somewhat 16%, strongly 17%, and then can't say is 5%, and never heard of is 7%. So that is for Rob Sand. Now let's look at Turek. Okay, we look at Turek, 51% total when it comes to favorable, 25% strongly, 26% somewhat. When it comes to unfavorable, 33% total, 17% somewhat, 16% strongly, and then we have the can't say, 7%, and then never heard of 9%. This is, when it comes to Turek, he's going to have to get out there, and people need to, are going to need to get to know who he is. But looking at his numbers, they're not bad. I mean, we're talking about unfavorables at 33%. We're talking about favorables at 51%. So his favorables are higher than his unfavorables, which is good. Now let's look at Donald Trump. So Donald Trump here, 42%. That's total when it comes to favorables. 27% strongly, 15% somewhat. The total here for unfavorables, 55%. Somewhat, 8%. Strongly, look at this strongly here, 47%. Wow. Can't say 3%, and then everybody knows who Trump is, so they can't say they never heard of him. So looking at his unfavorables are higher than his favorables. All right, let's clear this off just a little bit so we don't get confused here. All right, looking at Hinson. So Hinson, total here for favorables, 42%. Strongly is 22%. Somewhat is 21%. Her unfavorables, 49%. Somewhat, 14%. Look at this. Strongly, 34%. And then can't say 4%. And then never heard of 5%. So Hinson has a problem when it comes to her unfavorables. Her unfavorables at 49%. Her favorables at 42%. And so she's underwater, just like President Trump is underwater. And that is a problem because some of these voters might either vote against Hinson because they don't like her, or they just might not show up. And in both of those situations, it's going to hurt Hinson. Okay, let's look at Lane, the last one here. So total there, 38%. That's favorables. You have 14% there, strongly, 25% somewhat. Unfavorables, 41%. Somewhat, 16%. And then strongly, 25%. And 7% can't say. And then never heard of is a 13%. So Lane needs to get out there and get to so people know who he is. But look at his unfavorables are higher than his favorables as well. And so the only two people on this list that have favorables higher than their unfavorables are Democrats, right? Because you have Sand and you have Turek. The rest of the people here, their unfavorables are higher than their favorables. And so that should tell you something. At least when we're looking at the people who participated in this poll, the vast majority of them, they like the Democrat more than they like the Republicans. And let's go over to our Senate map really quickly. You know, it wouldn't be a video if I didn't go and show you guys some different scenarios when it comes to the Senate map. And so I've always stated, and right now I think we have 9 states that are in play. That could change, but I think right now we're looking at about 9 states that are in play. So when we're looking at Democrats and independents at 44, Republicans are at 47, and then in play you have the 9. So when it comes to Democrats, what they need to do is they need to defend 3 states. So they need to defend Georgia, they need to defend Michigan, and they need to defend New Hampshire. These are the 3 states they have to win. Okay. Now from there, you have 6 more states. And Republicans in this scenario, they need to defend at least 3 out of the 6. If they can defend 3 out of the 6, then they will maintain control of the Senate, because it would look something like this. Let's say they won in Iowa. Let's say they won in Texas. Let's say they were able to pull it out in Alaska. Okay, so they've picked up 3 states, and now we're looking at Republicans at 50. And that's it. Republicans, all they need to do is get to 50. If they can get to 50, then they will control the Senate, because the vice president will come in and break any tie. The highest that Democrats can get at this point is to 50 as well. And so that could be the scenario. So if we were to look at a scenario like that, we had Democrats winning in North Carolina, Democrats winning in Ohio, Democrats winning in Maine. Now we have that 50-50. That's where Iowa can come in, because in a situation where Turek finds a way to win in Iowa, then guess what? Now we're looking at Democrats and independents at 51. We have Republicans at 49. Guess what? Democrats take back control of the Senate. And when we're looking at that, Iowa is not one of those states that is the closest or the best opportunity for Democrats to pick up, at least not right now. Iowa's not one of those states. We have other states that Democrats, I think, just looking at the information out there right now, I think Democrats have a better opportunity to win in a state like Alaska, to even win in a state like Texas. And so it's very possible that Democrats might be able to get to 52 or even get to 53 if we see a blue tsunami. If we see Democrats really just winning everything, they do have a real possibility to get to 52 or 53. And so we'll just have to see. One thing that I will say, if we see a scenario where Democrats do win in Iowa and they win in Ohio, those are the 2 states that I'm really watching closely. I think Ohio, they have a better chance of winning in Ohio. But if we see them win in both Ohio and Iowa, we're probably going to see them do really well in Texas. We're probably going to see them also do really well in Alaska, because these 2 states, especially Iowa, it's going to be very close. It's going to be down to the wire. And so we'll just have to see how it all plays out. I just wanted to show you that. I like to show you guys the Senate map so you can kind of get an idea of why we're talking about these specific states. Why are we talking about Iowa? We're talking about Iowa because Iowa could decide who controls the Senate. And so as more and more polling comes out, I'll make sure to let you guys know what's going on with that. If you guys have any questions, let me know in the comments below. But ultimately, I want to know what you think. What do you think about Iowa? What are the possibilities, especially if you live in Iowa? What do you guys think? You know, let us know what's the climate on the ground in Iowa. Let me know that in the comments below. If you like this video, please give me a thumbs up. Please subscribe for more. And remember, stay informed, stay engaged, and I'll talk to you in the next one. Bye. So that's all we have for this video. Make sure if you guys want to send me an email, you can do that, david@thetecshow.com. Like the video, subscribe for more, and check out these videos over here for some more great content. Talk to you later. Bye.